be attached. Yataha, whereby. Atmapataha, degradation of oneself. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: one should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations, just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on Him, the only all-blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. Purport: in this verse, the process of devotional service is indicated by the great Goswami, Srila Shukadeva. He tries to impress upon us that instead of diverting our attention to several branches of self-realization, we should concentrate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the supreme object of realization, worship, and devotion. Self-realization, Self-realization is, as it were, offering a fight for eternal life against the material struggle for existence. And therefore, by the illusory grace of the external energy, the yogi or the devotee is faced with many allurements which can entangle a great fighter again in the bondage of material existence. A yogi can attain miraculous success in material achievements such as anima and laghima, by which one can become more minute than the minutest or lighter than the lightest. Or, in the ordinary sense, one may achieve material benedictions in the shape of wealth and women. But one is warned against such allurements because entanglement again in such illusory pleasure means degradation of the self and further imprisonment in the material world. By this warning, one should follow one's vigilant intelligence only. The Supreme Lord is one, and His expansions are various. He is therefore the supersoul of everything. When a man sees anything, he must know that his seeing is secondary and the Lord's seeing is primary. One cannot see anything without the Lord's having first seen it. That is the instruction of the Vedas and the Upanishads. So, whatever we see or do, the supersoul of all acts of seeing or doing is the Lord. This theory of simultaneous oneness and difference between the individual soul and the supersoul is propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. The Virat Rupa, or the gigantic feature of the Supreme Lord, includes everything materially manifested, and therefore the Virat, or gigantic feature of the Lord, is the supersoul of all living and non-living entities. But the Virat Rupa is also the manifestation of Narayana, or Vishnu, and going further on and on, one will eventually see that Lord Krishna is the ultimate supersoul of everything that be. The conclusion is that one should unhesitatingly become a worshipper of Lord Krishna, or for that matter, his plenary expansion Narayana, and none else. In the Vedic hymns, it is clearly said that first of all Narayana cast a glance over matter, and thus there was creation. Before creation, there was neither Brahma nor Shiva, and what to speak of others. Sripad Shankaracharya has definitely accepted this, that Narayana is beyond the material creation and that all others are within the material creation. The whole material creation, therefore, is one with and different from Narayana simultaneously, and this supports the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Being an emanation from the glancing potency of Narayana, the whole material creation is non-different from him. But because it is the effect of his external energy, Bahirangamaya, and is aloof from the internal potency, Atmamaya, the whole material creation is different from him at the same time. The example given in this verse very nicely is that of the dreaming man. The dreaming man creates many things in his dream, and thus he himself becomes the entangled seer of the dream and is also affected by the consequences. This material creation is also exactly a dreamlike creation of the Lord, but he, being the transcendental supersoul, is neither entangled nor affected by the reactions of such a dreamlike creation. He is always in his transcendental position, but essentially he is everything and nothing is apart from him. As a part of him, one should therefore concentrate on him only, without deviation. Otherwise, one is sure to be overcome by the potencies of the material creation, one after another. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:7 as follows: Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punasthani kalpado vistrajamyaham. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. The human life, however, is an opportunity to get out of this repetition of creation and annihilation. It is a means whereby one may escape the Lord's external potency and enter into his internal potency. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The First Step in God Realization. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamahyam Dharati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavang Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghuna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitang Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Niti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sa Sarva Dhi Vrityanubhuta Sarva Atma Yatha Swapna Janekshitaikaha Tang Satyamananda Nidhim Bhajeta Nanyatra Sajjedyata Atma Pataha. One should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations, just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on him, the only all-blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. So, this is a very packed verse, and especially this purport goes through many points, and each of those points could be spoken about for many, many lifetimes. So I have like 39 minutes, so I probably won't do it much justice, but I'll try to get through as much as possible. Basically, there's a few different points that Prabhupada goes over here. One of the most intrinsic and important points that we can understand is, well, first we have to look at the context of where this is being spoken. We just heard of the description of the Virat Rupa manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where different examples are given by which we can see the material nature as being non-different from the Supreme Lord. We can see different aspects of nature as being different qualities of God. And now we are hearing Shukadev Goswami advising that the most important thing is to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. So this is like the conclusion of what he was just saying. You know, as we know, and as many, you know, even people outside of Krishna consciousness know, there are many different paths of so-called self-realization. But Prabhupada is saying here that Shukadev Goswami is instructing his disciple Parikshit Maharaj to reject all these various paths and just simply focus on this path of focusing the mind on the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now, within this realm of focusing the mind on the Supreme Absolute Truth, there are also many different methods by which we can attain such a position. For instance, we were just hearing about this meditation on the universal form. You know, we also have the Ashtanga yoga process. We also, you know, of course, we have Bhakti yoga, we have Karma yoga, we have Jnana yoga. All of these different processes are ultimately meant to awaken some level of God consciousness, which means to fix the mind on a meditation of transcendence, a meditation of spirituality. And but so it's not exactly stated by Shukadev Goswami in this verse, But Prabhupada brings on the essence of what he really means, and that is to engage in the process of pure devotional service. This process of pure devotional service is not only recommended by all of the greatest authorities in spiritual knowledge in this modern age, but it's practically seen that this is the most practical and accessible means of self-realization for most people in this world. Nonetheless, us, for lifetimes and lifetimes of being impersonalists or atheists or just straight up demons, we have many misconceptions and we have many hang-ups. They're called anarthas. We have many hang-ups when it comes to the executing this process of pure devotional service. So Prabhupada makes the point that for one who is endeavoring in this process of self-realization, it might actually seem that your life becomes more difficult after you start it. It might seem that, before I was a monk, I wasn't so lusty or something like that. You might think like this, and this might be true to a certain extent. Most of the time, you're just not recognizing your lust, your greed, your anger, and things like this. And whenever you start to develop your intelligence a little more, you begin to recognize some of these problems in your character. But Prabhupada is making the point that that for one who is endeavoring in the process of self-realization, the yogi is faced with many allurements which can entangle a great fighter again in the bondage of material existence. And there are many cases of this that are recorded in the histories of the Puranas, in the Vedic literatures, and also that have been recorded in the modern age as well. Lord Indra is infamous for seeing great yogis making leaps and bounds in their yogic practices, and getting envious of them or getting worried that they're trying to take his position. So he is infamous for sending beautiful women and people with wonderful musical talent and things like this to try to break their meditation and ultimately make them fall down. And also, in modern history, we have Srila Haridas Thakur, who was basically the Muslim ruler of the province that he was living in. Basically, felt threatened by him, so he began to send prostitutes to try to convince him to fall away from his spiritual practice. But we see historically that those who are endeavoring in a process of yoga or a process of some level of self-realization for ulterior motives, for selfish motives, you see that those are the ones that always fall down. The ones who are engaged in this process of self-realization with pure unalloyed love and with the intention of cultivating a mood of pure love, they cannot actually be touched by this maya, this illusion, which comes to bewilder not only just the gross materialists, but especially those who are endeavoring to escape this material situation. So this is historically recorded. Those who fall down in such a situation and those who ultimately are able to succeed in a time of testing. And this is because the reason that the devotees are always able to overcome such allurements is because the transcendental qualities, pastimes, names, the forms, all these different aspects of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, completely conquer over everything that, any type of enjoyment that you could possibly imagine in the material world. There's a verse in the Brahma Samhita that describes this. Ananda chinmaya rasatmataya manasu yaf praninam pratipalan smaratam upetya lilayitena bhuvanani jayatya jasram govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. So lilayitena bhuvanani jayatya jasram. You have lila, the lila of Krishna, lilai, and then bhuvanani, his activities in the world, basically. They are jayatya jasram, jayati. This jayati means that they conquer over everything. I forget exactly the word for word translation what he puts for jayati, but it's like very extravagantly conquer over. So just by meditating on these pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can triumphantly conquer over any obstacle in the process of self-realization. There's no need for worshiping demigods. There's no need for endeavoring to make money on the side. There's no need to get some kind of education first. There's no need to change the way you dress or cut your hair or different things like that. Nonetheless, we always accept what is favorable for the execution of devotional service, and we reject what is unfavorable for devotional service. And in this way, by our own endeavor, we can create a favorable situation for the execution of Krishna consciousness. It's not that we just say, oh, anyways, Krishna will protect, I'm a devotee, Krishna will protect me from Maya, so I can just continue to do all my nonsense. The devotee is constantly endeavoring to try to make a situation where he can execute pure devotional service. Nonetheless, so many devotees fall down. So many, so many big members of this movement, especially in recent history, have had some of the most abominable cases of gross fall down. Nonetheless, we can understand that if we faithfully follow this process, we can attain the highest success. This is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna directly asked Krishna, so what happens if I don't fight in this fight, if I give up everything, or what happens if I do fight in this fight? What happens if I kill everybody and gain everything? And what happens if I listen to your instructions and engage my activities in karma yoga? What's the destination of myself if I fail to execute such a thing? What is the destination? Am I going to go to hell for killing all of these people? Am I going to lose all my money? Is everybody going to hate me? Like things like this. He's directly addressing Krishna. He's asking him, what is the destination of someone who has fallen down from the path of yoga? And Krishna answers him that one who makes some advancement in Krishna consciousness, that's an eternal asset. There's like a spiritual bank account that one has, and just by performing a little bit of devotional service, you add a little bit of assets in this account. And specifically in Kali Yuga, we are given the best benefit of the doubt, where it's almost like these spiritual assets, they kind of like get what do they call it? Some interest on them too. It's like Krishna, Lord Chaitanya specifically, he really wants the conditioned souls to come back to Godhead. So he makes it super easy for them. But this wasn't the case always. Previously, you might advance a little bit in yoga, and then if you fall down, you have to take so many hellish births and different high and low class families going up to the heavenly planets and down to the hellish planets. But in Kali Yuga, just by a little bit of advancement in Krishna consciousness, one is practically guaranteed to attain success in this process. And this is guaranteed by Lord Chaitanya. So we can understand that if we sincerely endeavor to practice Krishna consciousness, but for whatever reason you might fall away, we can practically see that how Prabhupada dealt with this is that he would always encourage people to continue to chant Hare Krishna, to associate with devotees, to continue to eat prasadam and different things like this. But ultimately, it's not that that we're preaching, you're going to go to hell for eternity and things like this. So, but nonetheless, everyone should strive to execute their duties in devotional service without falling victim to the powerful allurements of Maya. And by taking shelter of meditating upon the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can very easily overcome these, and this has been practically seen. So this is the process which Shukadeva Goswami is recommending now, because he, as an advanced yogi, as an advanced devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's very experienced with seeing how the energies of Krishna work. And he knows that for one who is just starting to endeavor on the path of self-realization, it can be very difficult. So he gives the solution right here. It's very simple. This word, right from the beginning, dhi. So this is like a three-part compound word. Sarva dhi vritti. Let's see the translation. Sarvadhi vritti, the process of realization by all sorts of intelligence. So sarva means like everything. Dhi is translated as like realization, but also we can understand it to be meditation. Dhi mahi in the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is that? Very last line. So yeah, Satyam Param Dhimahi. Satyam Param, the supreme Satyam, the supreme good, that is what I want to meditate upon. Dhimahi. So here, and then we also have the word vritti. Vritti means intelligence, or yeah, the vritti means intelligence. So the process of realization by all sorts of intelligence. Sarva, dhi, vritti. So this basically means that by tuning your intelligence, one can meditate upon transcendence. It's not that we imagine whatever we want in spiritual life and expect to get some kind of positive result. There's a whole process behind it, and one has to enter into this process with a proper attitude and a proper understanding. This is where the intelligence comes in. So for one who refuses to engage in the process of Krishna consciousness, one who refuses to follow the 4 regulative principles, to chant their rounds, to go to the temple programs, you know, etc., and who on the side is cultivating all sorts of material desires, that person's knowledge is stolen by illusion. And they cannot properly meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, whenever problems arise in their material and their spiritual lives, instead of taking shelter of Krishna, they take shelter of Maya, which means that they're always defeated. Wherever there is Krishna and wherever there is Arjuna, there is always victory, Shri, what is Shri? Opulence, morality, etc. But for one who takes shelter of Maya, of the external material energy of Krishna, there is always misery, suffering, and temporality. Because this Maya, this material world, is described by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita as being dukhalayam ashashvatam. This dukkha, this is like suffering, and then alayam is like completely saturated with, is like completely full of like this suffering. Actually, oh man, what is this Croatian devotee's name? The great Kirtaniya. Older, he's friends with Gokul Chandra Prabhu. He was there in Lika and in Czech. Sorry, I'm just forgetting his name. He gave a Divya Prabandha Prabhu. He was making this point. He gave a little class. I don't think anybody else was there. You and Kalki were in the kitchen and you were knocked out somewhere, and he made this point that this Dukhalayam. So everybody has heard of Himalaya, right? The Himalayan mountain. Everybody calls it Himalaya, but it's Himalaya. So it's the same roots. So Hima means snow or ice, and Alaya means completely full of. So like the Himalayas is just a place that's full of ice. And similarly, this material world can be called Dukhalaya. Dukkha. It's full of dukkha. It's full of suffering. Anyways, that was just an interesting thing that he taught me. So anyways, for one who takes shelter in such a thing, who takes shelter in this material world, which is dukhalaya, clearly, if one is intelligent, they would realize that this is completely frivolous, that any endeavor to be successful in the material world is going to end in suffering. Nonetheless, the attraction of money, of women, and Prabhupada even mentions these Laghima and Anima, these mystic siddhis that one can attain in the practice of yoga. You know, there's 8 of them. I don't know all of them, but this Laghima and Mahima is you can become either super small or you can become super big. And it's like if you become very advanced in mystic yoga, these are some like powers that you're like granted by the material energy. And these things can be very attractive to some people. You know. But anyways, even advancement for the purpose of getting mystic siddhis, what to speak of getting like women, money, cars, you know, and just like a happy family or something like that. All of these always end in suffering. And this is because they are separated from Krishna, who is the supreme blissful. It's where all bliss is coming from. So if you're separated from that source of bliss, then of course there won't be any. So this is the process of yoga, to connect with Krishna. And so how do we do it? You know, it's like Krishna is completely spiritual, and we are also completely spiritual, but we're in this illusion, and we're in this material pool where we can't really tell the difference between spirit and matter. And even if we can tell the difference, it's like, how do you truly differentiate it? And you know, how do you navigate your way through this world without being contaminated by the material energy? You know, this is where the process of Krishna consciousness comes into play. And this is where the intelligence is so important in the execution of this Krishna consciousness. It's not something that you can just take lightly, and that you can take cheaply and frivolously live your life however you want, you know, engaging in all sorts of mundane activities, listening to mundane music, eating food that's been cooked by mundane people, you know, so many different things. So the process of Krishna consciousness is meant to develop your intelligence to the level where the intelligence is in charge. The intelligence can see the difference between reality and illusion, and the intelligence dictates the activities of the mind dictates the activities of the senses. And in this way, whenever one is forced to associate with the objects of one's senses in this material world, if one's intelligence is at the highest level, then they will not be put into bondage with these sense objects. So this is the process. And how do we do that? We constantly hear about the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is completely free from his material energy. And Prabhupada talks about how, you know, so there might be the argument, it's like, okay, you're saying God he has nothing to do with the material world, but then we're just hearing about how God has everything to do with the material world. He is the universal form. He is the material world. That's what we were just talking about. And Prabhupada talks about how this is Lord Chaitanya's philosophy of Achintya Bheda Veda. This is directly talked about in this verse. So people who think that this philosophy is concocted by some superficial means, clearly, where is it? Eka, Ikshita. Yeah, so one and the same. So he translates this ekaha to be one in the same. This is the philosophy of this Krishna consciousness, is that God, in one sense, is completely free from the material world, and at the same time, he is the material world. It is non-different from him because it's one of his energies. This material world is specifically one of the Supreme Lord's energies, which is so far separated from him that it's literally like completely different from him. Nonetheless, we can those who are Krishna conscious can extract the essence from the material world and see how Krishna is involved with everything. Specifically, in the first canto, we heard a little bit about the creation, the primary creation by the Supreme Lord, and even, you know, Prabhupada mentions it in the purport too, but even Krishna has nothing to do with the creation of the material world. First of all, it's like Krishna expands himself in this Chatur Vyuha, and then of that 1/4 of his expansion is kind of in charge of this creative impetus, and then of that of Sankarshana, the one who is in charge of creative impetus, there's the manifestation of Narayana, and then from Narayana we have Mahavishnu, and then from Mahavishnu finally we have this glancing over the Mahatattva, the glancing over the total material energy. And even that is only conducted through the agency of Krishna's spiritual chit potency, Rama Devi. It's described in the Brahma Samhita that actually, you know, this association between Vishnu and with the material energy, this glancing upon it, there's so little of a connection there, because it's literally so. Rama Devi, the chit potency of Krishna, is a maidservant of Krishna. She is a servant of him. And just how a servant, whenever they see their master just glance at something, they know his desire and they know what to do. They know how to execute his desire. It's like if I just like looked at this water and then it's like everybody knew that it was empty, somebody might like get up and fill it up thinking that I was thirsty. Similarly, Rama Devi, the chit potency, sees Krishna's desire to become many, or to create, and then whenever she sees him glancing upon the material energy like that, she is the one which delivers this time principle. Su darshana. You have su and then darshana. Darshana means to see. Su means like good, or like creative or something like that. So this Sudarshana, it basically is like it's a direct energy coming from Krishna, but it's delivered through the agency of one of Krishna's representatives, one of Krishna's servants. And from there, so many of Krishna's different energies manifest, and so many of his servants start to become involved with the workings of the material nature. This is all described in the Bhagavatam and specifically in the Brahma Samhita. It's like it goes super into detail. But the point is that Krishna is completely aloof from this. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Vrindavan itself is surrounded by a vast ocean of milk. And then around there you have innumerable spiritual planets. And then around there you have an entire Viraja river, which is, and then across the river, finally, you have the material energy. So Krishna there's never any point where Krishna is even thinking about or looking at or anything about he has no real relationship with the material world. He executes activity in the material world through his different energies and through his different potencies, and that's where Lord Shiva comes in. That's where we have Durga and all these other different heads, the different so-called creators and maintainers of the material world. So it gets really complicated. But it's all coming from just this little desire of Krishna to just want to create, just to expand his own enjoyment. There's this aphorism in the Chandogya Upanishad that Prabhupada sometimes quotes. It's like, do you know this one? Bhuma Syam or something like that. It's like being one, he became many. Eko, yeah, that makes sense. Eko Bahusyam, yeah. So anyways, it's like Krishna is eternally one, but he desires to be many, so therefore he becomes many. So of course this can mean his manifestation as his marginal potency, the jivas. This can be his manifestation of other Vishnu avatars, Purusha avatars, and of course of the material energy. But nonetheless, Krishna always remains Krishna. He always remains completely full in himself, and nothing can be separated from him. Therefore, it's always one, and therefore it's also always separated. And this is the philosophy, this is the inconceivable philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. So it gets really complicated. But nonetheless, you can understand the Lord through these energies by which he's acting. You can see how Krishna, he plays a part in every single thing that happens, whether it's directly happening to you, whether you see it happening to somebody else, whether, you can just practically see how God is acting whenever you understand that Krishna, that Vishnu, that Narayana is the super soul of everything. And this is the whole point of this meditation on the universal form. Seeing that Krishna is ultimately there in all of the activities of the universe. Whenever you can understand this, and you can understand the vastness and when you can see that God is actually within everything in this material world, then gradually, by the development of intelligence in this aspect, you'll be able to see how every living entity is connected with God, how every activity is connected with God. You'll be able to ultimately see that God is within every particle, he's in between every particle, and then in this way you can have some realization of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this super soul feature of God. And then, of course, as you go on, Prabhupada's talking about advancing even further from this realization. Because you have, what is this? Vedanta Tattva Vedam. Yajna. What is it? Vidanti Tattva Vidas. Tadvam Yajnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti. Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. So you have Brahman, and then you have Paramatma, and then you have Bhagavan realization. So here Prabhupada makes the point that this universal conception, this conception of the universal form is ultimately is meant to awaken some level of realization of the Paramatma feature of the Lord, the super soul, seeing that Krishna in his localized aspect is everywhere and is personal and is acting in this material world. But you can go even further to see that actually Krishna is just a blue cowherd boy that is always in Goloka, and he has nothing to do with this material world at all. So this is the different levels of understanding. And here in Devi Dham, it can be very difficult to see so far. But those who have seen it, they record what they have seen about the spiritual world, and then and also Krishna himself comes and tells us about the spiritual world. And from that information, we can develop our intelligence enough to at least awaken a desire to go there. And this is very practical for us who are trapped in this Devi Dham. What is Goloka namni nija dhamni tale chatasya Devi mahesha hari dhama suteshu teshu te te prabhavani chayavihitascha govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. So from the perspective of Lord Brahma, who is in Devi Dham, he's like the greatest in Devi Dham. This is the world of Durga, the world of the material energy. And then a little bit higher than that, you have Mahesh Dham, the Shiva, the abode of Shiva, which is like halfway spiritual and halfway material. That's a whole other thing. And then above that, you have Hari Dham, which is like the spiritual world, Vaikunta. And then even higher than that is Goloka Dham, where Krishna resides in Vrindavan, where he's eternally engaged in relishing spiritual relationships with his devotees. And so this is the highest thing that we're setting our goal. We want to go all the way to the very, very top. So it's a bold thing, and Maya's going to fight back really, really hard, because we're in Devi Dham. She's in charge here. We're just very minuscule living entities who are basically hopeless without the help of Krishna and his representatives who come here to teach us about the spiritual world and teach us the principles that we should follow in order to attain that goal. So none of these things should be disregarded as unimportant. But yeah, there's so much more from this purport that could be spoken about. I'm supposed to end at 8:15, right? Yeah. That's like the cutoff. Okay. So yeah. I think I'll end it there, and then if anybody has any questions or comments, we can open it up for more discussion. Yes.
How is Mahesh Dham half spiritual, half material?
This is like a whole thing. So, first of all, I don't know, but this is discussed by Gokul Chandra Prabhu in his seminar on Brahma Samhita. And so this Brahma Samhita, the Chintamani Prakara, this is just one part of the Brahma Samhita where Lord Brahma is having darshan of the spiritual world. But before that, there's like a whole technical description of the universe, the cosmic manifestation. I could pull it up, and to be honest, it doesn't make complete sense to me. I don't really know. But if you look at the Goloka chart, I don't know if like that's possible to pull it up here. But if you look at it, it's so Shiva Dham or Mahesh Dham is higher. It's halfway, and one side is light and one side is dark. And this goes back to like actually understanding like what is Shiva's role in the material world. And actually Shiva's role is to act as a representative of Vishnu so that Vishnu doesn't have to come in contact with the material energy. And it's described in the Brahma Samhita that actually whenever this glance is cast over the Mahatattva, then this agitation, it is like harmonized with, so this female symbol, this female principle is harmonized with the male principle of Shiva, of Shambhu. And this Shambhu is described as a glowing, it's really interesting the language he uses. It's like a twilight reflection of the effulgence of Krishna, of Narayana. Yeah. It's like a twilight, it's very confusing, but it's like a very abstract halo which is interacting with this very abstract female energy. And then as they interact with one another, there are so many other manifestations that come around, and then you have the male symbol and the female symbol of the reproductive organs. And but the point is that Lord Shiva is acting as a representative of Vishnu so that he doesn't have to directly touch the material energy, so that he doesn't, so Devi is, although she is a, just forget about it, this is, yeah. So Devi or Durga is, although she is one of Krishna's energies, although she is one of Krishna's servants, he never consorts with her. She is not his consort in a very practical sense. They never reproduce with one another. That's what consorts do. They never relate with each other on a very intimate level. In fact, it's said in the Brahma Samhita that she feels so ashamed for being so far separated from Krishna that she feels ashamed to even to show herself to Vishnu. She always tries to stay away because she feels so ashamed from being away from Vishnu. So Shiva is the representative of Vishnu that comes to directly reproduce with this female material energy. And for that reason, he has to be directly in touch with the material energy, but he's also, because it gets confusing, because another thing to consider is that this Durga is manifesting from the internal chit potency, and then this internal chit potency is the only means by which one can enter into the spiritual world, because that's where the material world is coming from. They have to go through her line. So similarly, because Lord Shiva is this is some philosophical speculation, Lord Shiva is directly in touch with her. By her favor and by Lord Shiva's favor, you can enter into the spiritual world. It's way more complicated than that, but I mean, this isn't what I was even talking about. But it would be, oh no.
You won't find like a higher version.
You won't find it. So basically, this is Sadashiva Loka. The high part is spiritual, and the lower part is material. And so you can go to Shiva Loka and still be in the material world, and you can also go to Sadashiva Loka and it'd be completely spiritual. Nonetheless, it's still lower than Vishnu Dham.
Separate planets.
It's one planet. It's like they're two hemispheres of one sphere, basically. I don't know. It's Shiva Tattva is like
people going to like Shiva Loka, or like I forget, like the mountain. I forget.
Kailas.
So is the Kailas mountain? So that's we could understand that as the material sphere.
So again, I don't know, but Lord Shiva has he's got this planet that's described in 9th canto or something, where he's got all these women who are serving him. I think Gokul Chandra Prabhu said that this is his. Oh man, I don't know. It's that is different from Sadashiva Loka. I'm pretty sure.
This is where he chills out.
That's where he goes to enjoy the material nature. That's why Shiva is directly in touch with material nature. Nonetheless, you see that he's not bewildered. He's not necessarily affected by it. it's complicated. I don't know. Yes.
So it says how, how Durga can creates and maintains and destroys. But it's also understood that Brahma is creating, Vishnu is maintaining.
Yeah, yeah.
So how is Durga?
So there's so many creators and so many destroyers in the material world. So you have Sarga, the original creation that's conducted by Vishnu, and then you have Visarga. And Visarga, you know the H with the dot on it, Pataha.
Yeah.
So it's like a little echo at the end. So Visarga is like a little echo of like creation from Vishnu. So this Visarga, this secondary creation, is conducted by so many different representatives of Krishna. Lord Brahma is the first living entity who in each universe, but Devi is actually Devi, Shiva. They're actually presiding over all material universes. It's not like there's like one Durga in each universe. There's like Durga who is like in charge of all these universes, and Lord Shiva is also like, there is a planet in each material universe with Lord Shiva and Devi, but there's also outside of that, and so like, it's.
Like one Shiva over all that also, even though there's one.
Yeah, and there's also one Shiva in each universe too. The same thing with Vishnu. Vishnu is outside, he's also inside. Prabhupada gives a really interesting understanding. So that basically the elements that the body is made out of, all of these elements are inside of our body, and also all of the elements are existing outside of our body in the world. So similarly, specifically with Vishnu, he is inside of the creation and he's also outside of the creation at the same time. It's the same thing for some of these other rulers of the material world.
So specifically, how is her energy working? You said she's the echo of like creating, maintaining, destroying.
Yeah,
What sets her apart from just
she's the mother of all moving and non-moving entities. What is this? Srishti sthiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chayeva yasya bhuvanani bibharti durga ichanu rupam api yasya cha cheshtate sa govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. This is a description of Devi Dham, of Devi. The external potency Maya, who is of the nature of the shadow of the Chit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of the mundane world. And then it's explained in the purport. So read the purport for text, this text in the Brahma Samhita. Srishti sthiti pralaya sadhana.
So she creates, maintains, destroys in the sense that one, that she allows it, and two, that these creators, maintain, destroys are using her energy to do these things. So,
Yeah, you could say like that. But nothing, like Prabhupada says, nothing happens without Krishna glancing first. So she is still under there, under his authority. Okay, anything from the Mataji side? Yes, Mataji. So we also have nothing to do with material energy. We're also on the same spiritual, we're also originating from the spiritual world, and that means that we have an eternal relationship with Krishna. So, oftentimes we talk about establishing a relationship with Krishna, beginning to associate with Krishna, but actually this is something that's eternal. Krishna is always he's always right beside you in your heart, So, actually, because we think that we're a product of the material nature, we think that we're completely separate from Krishna. So we think that, how can we possibly be connected with the spiritual nature? But if you understand that I myself am actually part of that spiritual nature, then that's like the first prerequisite to understanding your relationship with Krishna. You understand? It's like that connection is already there. It's just a matter of awakening this knowledge of that. Your eternal relationship with Krishna is always there. Right now you're in illusion. We're all in illusion, and the whole point is to get out of illusion, to see. I heard it explained like one time. You ever like look in like a car like window, and it's like you see your reflection on it, and then you might be looking at your reflection, but then you realize like, oh, like there's somebody in the car, and you can like see them like a little bit like that. I heard it like explain that like basically like we're kind of doing that right now. We're just like looking at like this reflection, and we think it's just like ourselves. We think we think we have complete knowledge and everything, but actually like Krishna is there the whole time. And then with the development of intelligence and knowledge and everything, then you'll be able to see that he's been there the whole time. Anything else? We should probably end it there. Okay, Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.